Last time I mentioned that part 2 was on the way when the story broke. And now it has. Welcome back to Red State Horror for the story titled, She Never Left. Part 2, The Story Breaks. Pickett County, Tennessee, the conclusion. What Carol Ann witnessed. The two men. What happened next? This took place last Thursday in Pickett County, Tennessee. Two men have been named. One of them resigned that same afternoon. Carol Ann Teller has been living in a hollow behind her own house for 9 years because of what she saw those two men do on her property in October 2013. Tonight you're going to find out what that was. Before we go any further, do the thing. Phone face down, brightness low, headphones in. If you watched part 1, you already know why. If you didn't, go watch it first. This one won't land the same if you don't know who Carol Ann is, who Maya is. What does the red door mean? For everyone who's been waiting, I know you've been waiting. I've seen your comments. Every single Carol, every single part 2. This one is for you. Let's go. Welcome back to Red State Horror. If you're new here, this is part 2 of a story that started with a grocery receipt on a kitchen counter in an abandoned Tennessee farmhouse. Go watch part 1 first. I'll be here when you get back. For everyone else, you've been patient. You've been in the comments every day asking questions I couldn't answer yet. Watching, waiting. Carol Ann Teller spent 9 years waiting for someone to listen. The least I could do was make sure I got it right before I spoke. I got it right. Here we go. Where we left off, 90-second recap. For anyone who needs it, here is where part 1 ended. Maya Kowalski bought an abandoned farmhouse in Pickett County, Tennessee for $42,000. 3 days after she moved in, she found a grocery receipt on her kitchen counter dated 6 days before she arrived. The loyalty card name on the receipt was Carol Ann Teller, the previous owner, who had been officially declared dead by Pickett County in 2015. There was no obituary, no death record, no grave. There was a hollow at the back of the property. Inside it, a small structure, a cot, a lantern, 8 years of photographs. The last 4 photographs were of Maya's red door. Carol Ann Teller had been living 40 feet behind her own house for 9 years. Watching, waiting, leaving coffee thermoses empty on Maya's back porch step. Maya took Carol Ann to a motel in Cookeville. A journalist in Nashville had the documents Carol Ann had spent 9 years building. 30 years of notes, photographs, and evidence about two men in Pickett County and what they did on her property in October 2013. I told you part 2 was coming when the story broke. Last Thursday, it broke. Let me tell you everything. Chapter 1. What Carol Ann saw in October 2013. I need you to understand something before I tell you this part. Carol Ann Teller is not a dramatic person. She is not someone who exaggerates or embellishes or reaches for effect. She is a woman who spent 9 years in a hollow keeping meticulous records because she understood that the only thing that would matter in the end was what she could prove. Not what she felt, not what she suspected, what she could actually put in front of a journalist and say, here is the documentation. Here is the date. Here is the name. So when I tell you what she saw on the evening of October 11th, 2013, I want you to know it comes from a woman whose instinct, always, was to write it down and verify it before she said it out loud. She wrote it down that same night. In a notebook she still has. This is what it says. October 11th, 2013 was a Friday. Carol Ann had been at her sister's house in Cookeville for the day, helping her with a kitchen repair. She drove home in the early evening, arriving at the farmhouse just after 7 p.m. It was already getting dark. She pulled into the driveway and noticed something immediately. There was a truck parked on the access road that ran along the southern edge of her property. A black Ram pickup. She didn't recognize it. She went inside. She put her keys down. She looked out the back window. There were lights in her backyard. 2 flashlight beams, moving slowly through the trees toward the hollow. She watched for a few minutes. The lights disappeared into the hollow. She waited. They came back out about 20 minutes later, moving faster now, back toward the access road. She heard the truck start. She heard it leave. She went out the back door with her own flashlight. In the hollow, near the old spring house she'd always used for storage, the ground had been disturbed. Freshly turned earth, a rectangle of it, roughly 4 feet by 2 feet, the soil dark and loose against the compacted leaf mat around it. Carol Ann Teller stood in the hollow on the evening of October 11th, 2013, and looked at a fresh patch of turned earth on her own land. And she understood, with a clarity she later described as the kind that hits your body before your brain, she understood what she was looking at. I knew, the way you know some things, without being able to explain how you know them. I stood there for a long time, and then I went back inside, and I got my notebook, and I wrote down everything I'd seen. The truck, the time, the lights, the ground. I wrote all of it down, because I knew I was going to need it. She did not call the sheriff that night. She thought about it. She came close. She had the phone in her hand twice. Both times, she put it down, because the black Ram pickup had a county seal on the door. She spent the next 3 weeks being careful, moving around her own property like someone who suspected she was being watched, which, it turned out, she was. She set up a trail camera she ordered online. She pointed it at the hollow access path. On October 28, 2013, the camera captured 2 men walking down the access path toward the hollow at 11:14 p.m. One of them was Gary Loftus. Gary Loftus was the Pickett County property assessor. He had held that position since 2008. He was 51 years old, a church deacon, and a volunteer on the county fair committee. He had a wife and 2 adult children. The other man was Deputy Sheriff Warren Hale, 38 years old, 6 years on the Pickett County force, coach of his son's youth soccer team. Carol Ann watched that trail camera footage at 11:30 at night, sitting alone at her kitchen table, in the house that is now Maya's house with the red and blue door. She recognized both men immediately. She had known them for years. She wrote their names in her notebook, underlined them, and then she sat there for a very long time, figuring out what to do next. Subscribe to Red State Horror right now if you are not already. This is the story we have been building toward. Part 3 is already taking shape. Subscribe so you are here when it lands. Chapter 2, What Was in the Ground? I am going to be careful here, because what Carol Ann believed was in that disturbed earth, what she eventually documented, what the journalist in Nashville has now confirmed with 3 independent sources, involves an ongoing law enforcement matter. There are things I cannot say yet for legal reasons, and I will explain those reasons. What I can tell you is this. Gary Loftus and Warren Hale were not on Carol Ann's property at 11 o'clock at night to check on her land, and the disturbed earth in the hollow was not from a natural cause. And when Carol Ann hired a lawyer in Cookeville in November 2013 and told him what she had seen, and showed him the trail camera footage, he told her something that she has repeated to me twice now, both times in the same words. He said, "Carol Ann, what you are sitting on is either going to free you or destroy you, and I cannot guarantee which one it will be." The lawyer's name was Paul Addington. He practiced out of Cookeville. He had no connection to Pickett County, no family there, no relationships that could be leveraged against him. Carol Ann had chosen him specifically for that reason. She spent November and December of 2013 working with Paul Addington to build a record. She gave him copies of everything: the notebook entry from October 11th, the trail camera footage, photographs she had taken of the disturbed ground, and a second patch of turned earth she had found on the far side of the hollow near the creek in early November. 2 patches of disturbed earth. Different dates. Same hollow. Paul Addington filed a quiet inquiry with the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation in January 2014. Not a formal complaint, just a question through back channels, whether any missing persons cases in the surrounding counties had connections to Pickett County property records. He got a call back within 48 hours from a TBI agent named Marcus Webb. Agent Webb asked Paul Addington if his client would be willing to speak with him. Paul called Carol Ann. Carol Ann said yes. They arranged to meet in Sparta on February 3, 2014. On February 1, 2014, 2 days before the scheduled meeting, Carol Ann came home from a trip to the grocery store in Byrdstown to find her front door standing open. She always locked it. She had locked it that morning. Nothing was missing. Nothing was visibly disturbed, but her laptop, which she kept on the kitchen table, had been moved. Just slightly. 2 inches to the left of where she always kept it. Someone had been in her house. Someone who had a key, or knew how to get through the lock. Someone who wanted her to know they had been there. Carol Ann called Paul Addington. Paul called Agent Webb. The Sparta meeting was moved up to that same evening. She drove to Sparta. She met with Agent Webb for 3 hours. She drove home. She packed 1 bag. She walked out her back door and into the hollow, and she did not come back inside for 9 years. I had 24 hours, maybe less. I knew it the minute I saw that laptop had been moved. Someone was telling me they knew what I was doing, and if they were willing to break into my house to tell me that, then the next step was something I didn't want to find out about. Hit like right now. This story is bigger than I thought it was when I started it, and your likes are the reason YouTube keeps showing it to people who need to see it. 1 tap. Thank you. Chapter 3, 9 Years in the Hollow. People keep asking me the same question in the comments. They ask, how did she survive? How does a 60-year-old woman live in a hollow in rural Tennessee for 9 years without anyone finding her? The answer has two parts. The first part is practical. Carol Ann Teller grew up on that land. She knows every inch of it the way you know your own house in the dark. Where the water is, which plants are edible in which season, and how to stay warm in a Tennessee February. She is not the fragile person that the question imagines. The second part is harder to explain. She stayed because she had something to protect. And she was not going to leave until she had someone to give it to. For 9 years, she was waiting for the right person to walk through the door of her own house. The hollow was, in many ways, better than it sounds. The spring house gave her a structure with stone walls that held heat better than you'd expect. She had a wood stove she'd installed herself in the second year. A small one, vented through the old stone chimney original to the spring house's construction. She had blankets, good ones. In waterproof storage, she left the property regularly. Not in Pickett County. Never in Pickett County after 2014. She kept a bicycle at the edge of the back acreage and would ride it to a spot near Livingston, where an old friend from her sister's circle, a woman who asked no questions and is not named here for her own protection, would pick her up and drive her to towns in Overton and Putnam counties. She cleaned houses there, under a different name. Cash only. She kept a P.O. box in Livingston under a name she had used since 2015, one she had never written down anywhere. The county declared her dead in 2015. She found out through a notice her friend had clipped from a Livingston newspaper and left for her. It was strange, Carol Ann told Maya. Reading your own death notice, knowing someone signed off on it, knowing who signed off on it. She knew who had pushed for that declaration. Gary Loftus, in his role as property assessor, had been the primary advocate for moving on the abandoned property, clearing the title and getting the land back into the county's hands. He thought if the house sold, I'd disappear for real, she said. He thought I'd take it as a message. Upon receiving a newspaper clipping from a friend in Livingston, Carol Ann discovered she had been legally declared dead in 2015. She recounted the unsettling experience to Maya, noting the strangeness of reading her own death notice and knowing exactly who had orchestrated the declaration. The individual behind the push was Gary Loftus, the county property assessor. He had aggressively advocated for the abandonment of the property to clear the title and return the land to county control. Carol Ann believed his motivation was to force her into a permanent disappearance, sending a message that her final ties to her past were severed, and it was time for her to move on. Instead of leaving, Carol Ann remained and observed the following events. Her house remained vacant for an additional 3 years. The county eventually listed the property for sale. Maya arrived at the driveway on a Saturday in November. On her very first day, Maya chose to paint the front door red. Reflecting on that moment during a phone call 3 weeks after the situation unfolded, Carol Ann explained that Maya's immediate decision to paint the door signaled a person who possessed a strong sense of self and was unafraid of being noticed. She did not move on. She watched the house sit empty for 3 more years. Then she watched the county list it. Then she watched Maya's car pull into the driveway on a Saturday in November. Then she watched Maya paint the door red on her first day. I knew then, Carol Ann told me when we spoke by phone 3 weeks after everything broke. A red door on day 1, before she'd unpacked a single box. That's someone who knows who they are. Someone who isn't afraid of being seen. She smiled when she said that. I could hear it. I thought, that's my person, she said. After 9 years, that's finally my person. What Carol Ann had been building in the hollow for 9 years was not just survival. It was a case. The notebook she had started on October 11th, 2013, had grown into 7 notebooks by 2023. Every observation, every dated entry, and every piece of information she had gathered about Gary Loftus and Warren Hale through careful research during her Livingston trips. Public records, property filings, court documents, and news articles. Anything that built a picture of who these men were, what they had access to, and what pattern of behavior connected them to the hollow on her property. She had also maintained contact with Paul Addington's office through her P.O. box. Addington had retired in 2019, but had passed her file to a colleague named Rachel Torres. Rachel Torres had kept the thread alive, and it was Torres who eventually connected Carol Ann with Dana Perkins at the Tennessee Investigative News Network when Carol Ann finally decided, in the fall of 2023, that the time had come. The grocery receipt was not an accident. Maya told me this, and it took me a moment to understand what she was saying. The receipt, the loyalty card receipt, sitting on the kitchen counter when Maya found it Monday morning, Carol Ann had left it there deliberately. She wanted to be found, Maya said, not by the authorities. By me. She'd watched me for 3 days. She'd made her decision. She left the receipt as a breadcrumb. She knew I'd Google the name. She knew where that would lead. She was ready. 9 years of waiting. And when the moment came, she engineered it down to a grocery receipt on a kitchen counter. Share this video right now. Part 2 is the payoff that Part 1 promised. Everyone who watched Part 1 and sent it to someone. This is the one they need. Share it. Post it. Text it. Carol Ann's story deserves to be heard by every single person. Chapter 4. Dana Perkins and What She Found. Dana Perkins has been a journalist for 22 years. She has covered state government corruption, environmental crime, and law enforcement misconduct across Tennessee. She is not someone who gets excited easily. She told me that when Rachel Torres first sent her the summary of Carol Ann's case, she read it twice because she thought she was misunderstanding something. She wasn't misunderstanding anything. She spent 6 weeks on the story before the first word was published. 6 weeks of independent verification, source development, and legal review. Because what Carol Ann had documented, and what Dana confirmed through 3 separate independent sources, was not just 2 men trespassing on private property at night. It was what they had put in the ground. I am going to be precise here about what I can and cannot say. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation has an open criminal investigation as of the date I am recording this. Dana Perkins' story, which was published last Thursday in the Tennessee Investigative News, remains cautious for these same reasons. Consequently, the details provided here are drawn from a mix of their published findings, direct accounts from Carol Ann, and other confidential informants whose identities I must protect. What can be said? The disturbed earth in Carol Ann's hollow, the 2 patches she had documented in October and November of 2013, was examined by a forensic specialist retained by Dana Perkins' publication. Ground-penetrating radar was used on Carol Ann's property, with her permission, in October 2023, 1 month before Maya moved in. The radar found anomalies. Both locations Carol Ann had documented, and a third she had not known about, on the far side of the hollow creek, partially obscured by root growth. 3 anomalies. Consistent with, and I am using the language of the forensic specialist's report here, subsurface deposits of organic material at depths between 18 and 36 inches. The TBI was notified of the radar findings through Rachel Torres' legal channels in November 2023. Agent Marcus Webb, the same agent Carol Ann had met in Sparta in 2014, who had never closed the investigation and had spent 9 years with a file and no complaining witness because the complaining witness had vanished, opened a formal investigation within 48 hours of receiving the radar report. The formal excavation of Carol Ann's hollow began on December 14, 2023. Maya Kowalski was in the farmhouse when the TBI vehicles came down her driveway. She called me that afternoon. She was very quiet on the phone. "They found something," she said. "How do you know?" I asked. "Because the agent who came to the door, Agent Webb, he had the look," she said. "You know how some news looks on a person's face before they say a word? He had it. I cannot tell you what was found in that hollow. The TBI has not released that information publicly as of this recording." Dana Perkins' article references. While I am unable to provide a detailed inventory of the items recovered from the hollow due to the TBI's ongoing silence, Dana Perkins reported the discovery of human remains consistent with multiple individuals, a fact she and I can only verify to that extent at this time. However, the consequences for Gary Loftus and Warren Hale are already becoming clear. Gary Loftus, Pickett County property assessor, resigned his position on the afternoon of last Thursday, the same day Dana Perkins' article was published. His resignation letter cited, quote, "personal health reasons." He has not made a public statement. His lawyer released a single sentence saying his client denies any wrongdoing. Warren Hale was placed on administrative leave by the Pickett County Sheriff's Office, pending the TBI investigation. Sheriff Ray Colby issued a brief statement saying the department was cooperating fully with state investigators. Ray Colby, who had told Maya in November that he didn't know where Carol Ann was right now, who had given Maya his direct number and told her to call him, not dispatch, who had shown Maya the hollow himself, walked her to it, cut the padlock, stood in that space, and looked at the photographs on the wall. I asked Carol Ann about Ray Colby directly. She was quiet for a long moment. "Ray is not a bad man," she said finally. "He's a man who knew something was wrong, didn't have enough to act on it, and convinced himself that was the same as not knowing. It's not the same, but it's a different thing from what Gary and Warren did." "Did he know you were in the hollow?" I asked. Another pause. "I think he suspected," she said. "I think he'd suspected for years. And when Maya showed up with that receipt, part of him was relieved. It meant someone else was going to have to make the move he never made." She paused again. "I don't forgive him for that," she said. "But I understand it. There's a difference. 9 years. I kept every record, every date, every name, every photograph, because I knew the day would come when it would matter, and I was going to make sure I was ready when it did. Subscribe to Red State Horror. This story is not over. The TBI investigation is ongoing, and when there are charges, when there are answers, I will be back on this channel with everything. Subscribe. Turn on the bell. Do not miss what comes next. Chapter 5. The house. The door. Right now. I want to step back from the investigation for a minute. From the TBI and the forensic specialists, the lawyers, and the journalists. I want to tell you about Maya and Carol Ann. Because in the middle of all of this, the excavation, the resignation, the investigation, the articles, the phone calls, two women have been quietly doing something that I think is the most important part of the whole story. They have been having dinner together. Every Thursday night, in the farmhouse in Pickett County. At the kitchen table where Carol Ann used to drink coffee before she walked out her back door 9 years ago. Maya told me about the first Thursday dinner the week after everything broke. She called it completely normal and completely surreal at the same time. She knows where everything is in that kitchen, Maya said. She knows which drawer the good knives are in. She knows the oven runs hot on the left side. She's been in that kitchen 10,000 times, and I've been in it for 6 weeks. She keeps almost correcting me and then stopping herself. Does that bother you? I asked. No, Maya said without hesitation. It's her house too. It always was. Carol Ann is staying in Cookville for now. Not at the motel Maya initially checked her into. She has a small furnished apartment arranged through Rachel Torres while the legal situation develops. She is meeting regularly with the TBI. She is working with Dana Perkins on a longer feature piece. She is doing, as she described it to me, all the things I spent 9 years preparing to do. She is also, for the first time in 9 years, sleeping in a bed with a roof over it that belongs to someone she trusts. How does that feel? I asked her. She thought about it for a moment. Like I've been holding my breath for 9 years, she said. And I finally let it out. I asked Maya if she ever regretted buying the house. She laughed. Not a polite laugh. A real one. I found a grocery receipt on my kitchen counter with a dead woman's name on it, and it turned into a TBI investigation, she said. So no, I don't regret it. Not even a little. This is the most alive I've felt in years. You painted the door red on your first day, I said. I always paint my door red, she said. I've done it at every place I've ever lived. It's just my thing. I told her what Carol Ann had said. About watching the door go red. About thinking, that's my person. Maya was quiet for a moment. Tell her, she said finally, that the door is staying red. I told Carol Ann. She said, I know. Chapter 6. What this means and what comes next. I want to be honest with you about what we don't know yet. We don't know what the TBI will find. We don't know what charges will be filed, or when, or against whom. We don't know the full story of what Gary Loftus and Warren Hale were doing on Carol Ann's property on those October nights in 2013. We know the ground was disturbed. We know the radar found anomalies. We know the TBI opened a formal investigation. We know one man resigned, and one is on leave. We don't know yet what all of that means. What we do know is this. A 67-year-old woman spent 9 years in a hollow behind her own house because she saw something that frightened her badly enough to leave everything she had. She spent those 9 years building a record because she understood that the truth by itself is not enough. You have to be able to prove it. She could prove it. And when she finally found the right person to hand it to, a 29-year-old woman who painted her door red on her first day, everything started to move. Dana Perkins's article has been read, as of this recording, by over 400,000 people. It has been picked up by 3 major Tennessee news outlets and 2 national ones. Gary Loftus's resignation made the Associated Press wire. Carol Ann Teller, who was declared dead in 2015 and who has had no official existence in any public record for 9 years, is now the subject of more coverage than anything that has happened in Pickett County in decades. She told me she finds that a little overwhelming and a little satisfying. Rachel Torres has filed paperwork to have Carol Ann's legal death declaration reversed. That process takes time, but it is in motion. Carol Ann will exist again, officially, on paper, in Tennessee. She will get her property back. That process is also in motion. The title situation is complicated. Maya owns the house now, legitimately, through a valid sale. But Maya has been clear from the beginning that she considers the house Carol Ann's as much as hers. They are figuring out the legal structure. Rachel Torres is handling it. She can have the property back completely, Maya told me. If that's what she wants. I mean it. I'll stay if she wants company. I'll go if she wants her land back. It's her choice. I asked Carol Ann what she wanted. She was quiet for a moment that stretched long enough that I thought the call had dropped. I want to plant a garden in the spring, she said finally. I haven't had a garden in 9 years. I want tomatoes. I want to sit on that porch in the morning with a cup of coffee. I want to see the door from the outside and have it look red." She paused. "Everything else can wait until after the tomatoes," she said. She never left. "I've been doing this channel for a while now. I've told a lot of stories. I've sat with a lot of people who lived through things that took something from them. Years, safety, peace of mind, and the people they loved. This is the first story I've told, where the person at the center of it got something back. Not everything. There are things you don't get back after 9 years in a hollow. There are things Carol Ann lost that no TBI investigation and no reversal of a death declaration will return. She knows that. She's not asking for what can't be given. But she has her land. She has a kitchen where she knows which drawer the good knives are in. She has a Thursday dinner and a young woman who paints her doors red and says, "It's her house too." She has spring coming. She has tomatoes to plant. That is not a small thing. The TBI investigation is ongoing. When charges are filed, if charges are filed, I will be back on this channel with that story. When the legal proceedings around Carol Ann's property and her legal status are resolved, I will be back. When Dana Perkins publishes her longer feature, I will link it in the description of this video. This story is not over, but this chapter of it is. Carol Ann Teller watched her door go red from the woods. She walked through it. She sat at her own kitchen table, drank coffee from her own mug, and told the truth after 9 years of carrying it alone. And the ground in the hollow is giving up what it was hiding. Slowly. The way the truth always does. In the end. Carol Ann Teller, 67 years old, Pickett County, Tennessee. She kept the records. She kept the notebooks. She kept the cameras running. She waited for the right person. She is having dinner on Thursdays in her kitchen. She is going to plant tomatoes in the spring. The door is red. Drop Carol in the comments. One more time. Because she earned it. And if this story meant something to you, if it stayed with you the way it stayed with me, share it with one person. Just one. That's how stories like this survive. Thank you for being here. Red State Horror. I'll see you next week. Subscribe to Red State Horror. Share this video. Drop Carol in the comments. One final time. And thank you, genuinely from the bottom of my heart, for watching both parts of this story. Carol Ann knows people are listening. That matters more than you know.